Good morning, Year 5. Happy Monday, and welcome to our final study of a chapter from Floodland. This week we are moving on to chapter 9, but don't worry, your teachers are going to continue reading the story to you in your morning and afternoon briefings, and we will of course finish the book by the February half term. However, this week we're focusing on chapter 9 and we're going to delve into it a bit more deeply and look at some language involved in it, answer some questions, and then finally at the end of the week create our big question answer. So as today is Monday, we're just going to be doing our vocabulary input and becoming familiar with the words you'll encounter throughout the text, and then doing an activity at the very end. So just a quick recap of where we are in Floodland. At this point, as we approach chapter 9, Zoe is still on Eel's Island with the likes of Doobie, Molly, Sarah, Munchkin and Spat. However, she is now trying to escape as she feels like a prisoner and she knows that it is no longer safe. So at this point in the story, she is trying to plot a plan, maybe form some alliances or friendships with people on the island and plot her way out of Eel's Island. So as we read throughout the week, you'll gain a better understanding of the text. And before we do that, we are going to look at the vocabulary we're going to encounter. So the first word you're going to see is occupied. Now some of you may know the meaning of this, some of you may not, or some of you may be unsure, so I'm going to explain it. Firstly though, my turn to say it, occupied. Very good, don't forget to repeat it back to practice saying it aloud. So occupied means to keep active or busy. And you can see from the picture that this woman is extremely occupied. She is really busy. And if I was to put that in a sentence, I could say that home learning has kept all of the Year 5 pupils occupied. And what I mean by that is, by doing your work at home, you have been busy at home and you are occupied by your work. You are always doing something, you are active or you are busy. So that's our first word. My turn again, occupied. Good. The second word is inhabitants. My turn, inhabitants. Yeah, tricky one to say. We can trip over our tongue quite easily saying inhabitants. So inhabitants is the plural of inhabitant, which is a person or animal that lives in a place. So quite simply, anyone that lives somewhere, they are the inhabitants of that place, or they're an inhabitant of that place. So you can see from the picture, the inhabitants of the city are strolling down the road. Or you could say the inhabitants of a forest are mainly animals. So it doesn't have to be just a person, it can also be an animal. The main inhabitants of the desert are probably camels. The inhabitants of London are known as Londoners. Okay, so there's multiple examples of how to use the word inhabitants, which simply means a person or an animal that lives in a place. Okay, so number 3. Confined. My turn, confined. Your turn. Good. So confined means to limit or restrict an area or space. So the example I've given is that the pupils were confined to the classroom during wet play. The area or space that they could go was restricted because of wet play. We are now confined to our homes mostly because we are in lockdown. So where we can go is restricted, the space we can travel or the area we can travel is restricted. We are now confined to our homes. It means we must stay there and we don't have much place to go, or many places to go. My turn again, confined. Your turn. Good. Okay, our next word, number 4, is jolt. My turn, jolt. Good. So jolt is a verb. So a jolt is a doing action and it means to push or shake someone or something abruptly and roughly. So that definition is a little bit complex. So basically it means just to push or shake. You can push or shake someone or something, and it means to do it quite suddenly and with force. So the example here will help us understand the word jolt a bit better. The boy jolted his father awake on the morning of his birthday. So the boy obviously went into his father because it was his birthday and he was excited, and he jolted his father awake. He pushed him or shaked him very abruptly and roughly to wake him up for his birthday. The girl here in the picture, she has jolted her sister perhaps, or her friend. She is shaking her quite suddenly and quite roughly to get her attention. So that is what jolt means. Jolt is the root word, and jolted would be the past tense adding ed. Okay, next word is defensively. My turn, defensively. Your turn. Good. So defensively is a manner to resist attack and protect oneself. So it comes from the root word defensive, and it is an adverb with our ly ending defensively. So the example in the sentence would be, the boxer acted defensively to resist the punches thrown by his opponent. So the boxer obviously put his hands up and acted defensively so he wouldn't be punched by his opponent in the boxing match. You can also act defensively by defending yourself, not just from attack physically, but also if someone blames you for something, you might act defensively. So perhaps in the picture here, the boy has folded his arms in defiance or defensively as his mother is telling him off for doing something wrong. So he is acting defensively here. He is not admitting to what he did, he is defending himself by acting defensively. Once again, my turn defensively, your turn. Right, fantastic. Okay, our next word is probably a new word to most of you, and it is tactful. My turn, tactful, your turn. Well done. So to be tactful, or what tactful means, is to show sensitivity or to show care when you're dealing with others or with a difficult issue. So you can see in the picture here that this woman is probably upset or she's dealing with something difficult, and the other woman next to her is being tactful with how she approaches her or how she's talking to her. She's dealing with the situation sensitively or with care and to reassure this person and make them feel better. So another sentence and another example that will help you understand it is, the boy was tactful when speaking to his friend who was upset. So because his friend was upset, the boy had to be tactful when speaking to his friend. He couldn't rush in and say, "What's wrong with you?" or "What's wrong? What's going on?" He needed to be tactful, he needed to be sensitive, he needed to be caring and to deal with the person who was upset. So if you're tactful, it means you're sensitive, you're aware of what's going on, and you help others to deal with difficult issues. Okay, so our next word is going to be duct. This is our penultimate word. This is word number 7 out of 8. And duct is something you've all done before. It means to lower your head or body quickly to avoid a blow. Now, blow was one of our words from last week. Can you remember what blow means? Yeah, blow, remember, it means a strike or a punch or something you are hit with. So it means duct means to lower your head or body to avoid being hit. So this boy here, there's something flying over his head, a ball it seems, and he is ducked to avoid it. Another example is, the girl ducked as the football was hurled in her direction. So I'm using another word from last week, hurled. Remember, to throw with force. The ball was thrown at force in her direction and she had to duck. You've all had experiences in the playground in school of having to duck when a ball or a tennis ball or a rugby ball or a football is flying in your direction. You've all had to duck. You've all had to lower your head or body to avoid a blow or being hit. So my turn, ducked. Your turn. Good. And our final word is surfaced. Now, surfaced, this word stems from the root word surface, so like a surface of the sea. And it's the same kind of idea. But what surfaced means exactly is to appear after being lost or hidden. So this woman seems to be hidden, and now she has surfaced. She has reappeared. The lost cat surfaced after a few days away from its owner. It means it came back after being lost or hidden, and it's resurfaced, or it surfaced and it came back. My turn, surfaced. Your turn. Good. Okay, so there are our 8 words for this week. They're really going to help us understand the text a bit better, and I look forward to seeing what sentences you can create alongside your activity sheet later on. So I'm going to take out my text now, and we are on chapter 9. So as always, on Monday I take the responsibility of reading most of the text, and then throughout the week you will take more and more onus and responsibility and read much more than I am. So just because this is our first time reading it, I'm going to go through it with you and explain what is happening. So really important you listen, as I haven't provided the text with you today, as you must watch the video. Also, don't forget to watch the end to mark your work before posting on Seesaw. Okay. Anyway, we're on to page 71 and we're on chapter 9 as I explained earlier. So, Zoe knew time was running out. She would have to find Laika fast, or she was going to get caught up in a fight she wanted nothing to do with. Her fate would become a matter of chances then. Fate means what happens to someone. With Munchkin occupied for a couple of hours, at least with Doobie's meeting, Zoe decided to find his hideout. She was convinced she could do a deal with him, just like her parents had with Sarah. They traded food for a useless bit of jewellery. She would trade information for silence. Her boat for not telling Doobie about Munchkin's lair. But to do that, she had to find it first. She's looking for leverage or something she can bribe Doobie and Munchkin with by hiding the fact that Munchkin has a secret lair from Doobie, who obviously would get very annoyed as he is the leader and he thinks he is in charge. She had to do it without being seen by anyone, and that was one of the things the inhabitants of the cathedral, they were always watching. What does inhabitants mean? Yeah, exactly, the people or animals that live in a place. So the inhabitants of the cathedral, the people who live in the cathedral, they were always watching. It was even hard to see everyone who might be watching her. Many of them clung to the dark corners, hidden from sight. Still the urge in her to explore was too strong to ignore. As far as she could tell, no one was taking any notice of her. As calmly as she could, she took a burning candle from the side wall of the cathedral and headed for the corridor she'd sat in the night before. In daylight, it was surprisingly easy to find the hidden door. She counted the number of steps she'd taken before, and there it was in front of her. Still, if you didn't know where to look, you'd probably never find it. She gave it a push with her hand, and it sprang back slightly. She put her fingers round the crack and pulled. The stone swung towards her. A narrow spiral staircase struck outwards into the huge old stonework of the walls. Shoving the smoky candle in front of her, she climbed into the hole. There was an iron handle fixed onto the back of the stone door. It was smooth and cold. She pulled the door to behind her. Her candle flickered gold on the stone, and she began to climb into the roof of the cathedral. On her way up there were a couple of turnings that she could have taken. A junction here and there with other passages led away into the cramped darkness. She's now going through the old stone part of the cathedral looking for Munchkin's lair, and there are a lot of junctions, which means a combination of passages into the darkness, and she needs to choose where to go. But to her it was obvious which way Munchkin went. Even in the gloom of her candlelight, Zoe could see where the side passages were thick with dust. As she climbed up the steep stone stairs, she could see that they had been swept by the regular passage of feet, Munchkin's feet. So Zoe is quite clever here and discerning. She's able to recognise that the passages full of dust have not been travelled on recently, but the ones that have been swept aside by the passage of feet must be Munchkin's, so she follows that path. Just as she began to wonder when the climbing would stop, the stairs ended abruptly. There was a low tunnel that ran away from her. Its floor curved slightly upwards, and she guessed she was right up in the roof now, in some space at the edge of the vaulting, so she's near the attic of the cathedral. She walked down the tunnel, choking from the smoke of the candle, in the confined space. At the end was a wooden door about 3 feet high. She pushed it open and found herself looking into Munchkin's lair. Almost immediately, she saw the hole in the floor that she'd spotted from below. She realised she'd have to be as quiet as Munchkin or someone might hear her. She stepped down the slight step into his secret world. You can see the author really playing on the S's here and using plenty of alliteration to add rhythm and imagery into our reading. At first, Zoe thought there was nothing there. There was a mattress, but no other furniture. She held her candle in front of her. There was something on the far wall. With a jolt, Zoe saw it was a map. So Zoe has been shaken suddenly and abruptly when she saw the map. Eagerly, she went to get a closer look, but something moved to her left. She spun and gave a little cry. There, on a battered wooden box, was a rusty cage. In the cage was a rat, standing on its back legs and sniffing the air. It tilted its head to one side, as if waiting to be fed. Now, tilted isn't one of our words for this week, but it was last week. Can you remember what it means? Yeah, it means the rat has lifted its head to one side in curiosity or in expectancy of being fed. "What are you doing here?" said Munchkin from behind her. His voice was quiet, but Zoe could tell he was angry. She remembered that if he were to shout, he'd be heard from below. He stepped forward. I didn't mean any harm, Zoe whispered. You're lying, said Munchkin, a little too loudly. He shrank at the sound of his own voice. No, said Zoe, but he knew that he was right. But she knew that he was right, rather. What are you doing here? He asked again. He moved in and shut the door behind her. Zoe took a step back, still holding her candle firmly. She tried to work out whether he'd risk attacking her up here. Munchkin seemed to be trying to work out what to do too. For a long time they stood watching each other carefully, like animals about to fight. In the cage, the rat dropped to its paws and ran up and down the length of the home. It suddenly gave a loud squeak. Shh, rat, said Munchkin. You must have to be really careful with noise. Up here, I mean, Zoe tried. You shouldn't be here, said Munchkin, but Zoe thought he sounded less cross. Does he think you brought some food? Asked Zoe, nodding at the rat. What? You're a rat. Have you come to feed him? There's never enough food, said Munchkin, but I gave Rat what I can spare, see? He's really nice, said Zoe, lying again, she thought. She wasn't actually afraid of rats. There were plenty of them around after all. It was just that this one was in pretty bad state. It had patchy fur and it looked as if it had been chewed off its own whiskers. It had the sort of mangy looking tail that only sick rats get. I know he's not much to look at, said Munchkin defensively. You should let him out sometimes. Do you let him out? Asked Zoe, realizing as she said that it might not be a tactful question to ask, but it was all right. Oh yes, he said, but sometimes it's such a job to get him back in the cage. He got out the door the other night and then I was hours chasing him all through. Are there lots of these passages then? Asked Zoe. Oh yes, said Munchkin, but he remembered something. You shouldn't be up here. Zoe cursed herself for bringing the conversation back to that. Why not? She said. Munchkin looked at her. This is my place, he said, and you shouldn't have come up here. Look, Munchkin, I'm sorry. I didn't mean any harm. I just want to know where my boat is. Well, it's not up here, is it? He didn't mean to be funny. Munchkin turned to look at his rat. He started whispering to it quietly, as if he had forgotten Zoe was there. All right, Rat? Been a good boy, have you? Look, Munchkin, please tell me where my boat is. No, he said, without turning around. Please tell me, and if you do tell me, then I won't tell Doopy about this place. Then he did turn around. Please don't do that, he said quietly. Well, just tell me where my boat is and... I can't, said Munchkin even more quietly. Please, don't tell him. He looked at Zoe, and she saw the fear on his face. She looked away. She knew she'd never been able to get him into trouble, and she hated herself for even trying to threaten Munchkin. She would be just as bad as everyone else if she started that kind of thing. Munchkin, she said, shaking her head. What are you doing working for Doopy? Mind your own business, he said, but it was without anger. Your meeting was over quickly. Doopy's got it all under control, he said. Then he added, please go. Okay, she said. Listen, I promise I won't tell anyone about this place, or Rat, okay? He nodded. As she stepped backward through the small door, she had to ask one more question. Munchkin, where's that a map of? He looked at it for a second. That's here, that is, years ago. See? There's no water anywhere, just a couple of rivers. This brown bit here, that's the island now, and that crosses the cathedral. Wow, said Zoe, her spirit leapt. She could see land, lots of land, land all the way from the island to Norwich, to the sea, miles and miles away. And in the other direction, the map finished before any sea appeared. Where did you get it? She asked. It was Mum's. His words reminded Zoe of her mother's pendant. She wanted to get it back badly, but knew it wasn't worth the fight. She already knew she would have to let it go, no matter how much it hurt. Have you got parents? Asked Zoe, stupidly. Not anymore, said Munchkin. Have you? Yes, said Zoe. No, I don't know really. There was an end to their talk. Please go now. Munchkin seemed to have gone back into his shell. That means he'd gone shy again or had become quiet. Munchkin, I couldn't come and have a proper look at the map sometime. Please go? Zoe knew she was taking a risk. If she pushed Munchkin too much and he got angry, someone might hear them. But she had to get a better look at the map, just quickly, to make a copy, or... Go, said Munchkin. She nodded her head. Okay, Munchkin, she said, giving up. She couldn't take the risk of someone hearing them. She decided to come back another time. She ducked backwards through the little door. You're both, said Munchkin suddenly. There's a shed, on the west side, but it's locked. Only Doobie has a key. Thanks, Munchkin. She rushed back into the room and nearly kissed him, but Munchkin looked so shocked that she backed away again, smiling. Thanks, she said. She left Munchkin in peace, which means she left him alone. Hope had started to surface in Zoe's heart. That means so surface, remember, means to reappear. So hope was now reappearing in her heart. It was coming back. She knew her parents had got as far as the island and had got away too. Her boat was all right. She knew where it was. She had let her compass. She just had to break the lock on the shed and she could get away. If I can get a proper look at the map, she said to herself. But there was hope. She might be able to talk to Munchkin round, to let her have a decent look at his map. Talking to Munchkin, she'd felt him warm slightly. It had been almost a normal chat, like one friend to another, only for a moment, but it gave her hope. It also made her realise how scared she was of Doobie and how little she liked his plans for her. Okay, so that's chapter 9, which we will study in more detail throughout the week. But for now, we're just going to really focus on vocabulary and practice what we learned earlier on. If you're doubtful about any vocabulary, just go back and watch the video. Otherwise, we're going to continue. So, as always, the first part is about our definitions and recognizing what definition is what. So, the very first one is occupied. The word has been given to me, so I need to come up with my definition. Now, I know that occupied means to keep busy and to be active all the time, so I can quite simply give a small, simple definition as to what occupied means. So, it means to be kept busy and or active. So that's the definition I have for occupied. If you want to reword those words, it's absolutely fine if it gives you a better understanding. Okay, in a moment you're going to go away and you're going to find the words that match these definitions and you're going to generate your own definition for duct, excuse me, based on what I explained earlier on. Then once you've done that, you're going to come down here and you're going to insert the correct words into the sentences. So once you have all the definitions matched up, you'll fully understand what each word means and then you'll be able to match up the words. So my first sentence. In southern Italy, there are 154,674 something. Now, I'm going to go back to my words. I know that tactful means to be sensitive, so we can't have tactful. Duct wouldn't make sense. Jolt makes no sense. Occupied, I'm kind of skimming and scanning these words here. And oh, I remember that inhabitants means people or animals that live in a place. So I'll go back to my sentence and see if that makes sense. In southern Italy, there are 154,674 inhabitants. That makes sense, because they are the people that live in southern Italy, and that's the number of people there. So I'm going to write in inhabitants. Okay, so your task, as always on your first day of reading, is to focus on the definitions before going on to this. Now, something I really like you to do this week is, if you have time at the end as an extension, could you please pick a couple of words and put them into your own sentences and post them on Seesaw so that us teachers understand and are able to be aware of what you understand about the words. So pause the video here and come back when you're ready to mark the answers. Okay, so in a moment I'm going to display the answers, but don't forget that you must self-mark these, as on Seesaw we want to see all your work self-marked, especially in reading and maths, before you post. So I'm now going to display the answers and talk through them. Okay, so the first word that I did earlier was occupied, and it means to keep busy or active. So I'll take that one. Then I had this definition given to me. A manner to resist attack and protect oneself or themselves, and that is to act defensively. So I can take that one. I was given another definition. To limit or restrict an area or space, and that was confined. So well done if you got that. Then I was given the word duct and I needed to give a definition. So the definition I gave was to lower the head or body quickly to avoid or blow. So I'll take that. You could have reworded those words, you could have said it slightly different, as long as you fully understood what duct means. Then I was given another definition. a person or animal that lives in a place, and that is inhabitants. Next one, to appear after being lost or hidden, is to surface. So Zoe's hope surfaced in her heart, it reappeared after being lost for a while. To push or shake someone or something abruptly and roughly is to jolt, so take or fix that. And finally, to show sensitivity when dealing with others or a difficult issue is to be tactful. Okay, so pause the video here if you need an extra couple of seconds to tick or fix your definitions. Otherwise, we're going to move on and look at the sentences. Okay, I did the first one earlier, so you can already tick inhabitants because that was done for you. Then the bus jolted over the rough road, so it shook abruptly because it was shaken by the rough road. So if you got jolted, well done. Next word, sickness confined him to his room. So because he was sick, he needed to stay in his room. Number 4, the goldfish surfaced to the top of the water to be fed. So it appeared so that it could be fed. I didn't snatch the ball, Paul said defensively to the teacher. So he's defending himself, he's trying to protect himself from what the teacher has said. So well done if you got that correct. Number 6, the teacher set tasks for the class that kept them occupied for the day. They were kept busy or active for the day based on the tasks. Number 7, the teacher was very tactful when correcting the pupils' writing. So when the teacher was given all the copybooks from the pupils, she was quite tactful and she was sensitive when dealing with them as she knew the pupils had put a lot of work in. And finally the last one, as the ball came flying over, Amy ducked to the ground so she wouldn't be hit. So well done if you got all those correct, fantastic work. And like I said, if you have time now, please go and do an extension of putting these words into your own sentences and then posting on Seesaw so that you can demonstrate your understanding and your further learning also. But thank you so much for listening. We're going to come back tomorrow and look at the text again, where as always you will take more ownership as the week goes on. So thank you once again. I look forward to seeing all your work on Seesaw and I'll see you in the morning. Bye for now.